Hello, welcome to this panel discussion about empowering young people to be responsible digital citizens. My name is Samantha York and I work in Google's Public Policy Department here in Australia. And I'm joined by three highly esteemed panelists here in Melbourne to talk to you today about how we can empower young people to be responsible digital citizens. I think we can all agree that technology and the internet has revolutionized the way that young people live their lives today, whether it's in their personal lives or indeed in the classroom. In the classroom, all sorts of new learning opportunities are available to young people, and the global environment for learning has suddenly opened up to them in their classroom in a way that we've never experienced before. Technology provides new and innovative ways for young people to engage, create and connect in the classroom, and I'm delighted to be here today with these three wonderful educators to talk to you about how we can enable young people to be safe and responsible online. So to introduce my panelists, first of all, we have Anthony Speranza, who is the ICT Learning and Teaching Leader at St Mark's Primary here in Victoria. Anthony is a Google certified education trainer in Australia, and he has received the 2014 Educator of the Year award by the Digital Learning and Teaching Victoria. He's passionate about contemporary spaces, pedagogies and collaborative practices amongst educators.
Thanks for having me.
Next we have Caitlin Wood, Head of Programs at Project Rocket, also based here in Melbourne. Project Rocket was founded by two sisters and set themselves the goal of forming a youth-led movement countering tackling bullying in schools. Caitlin spends a lot of time in schools talking to young people and teachers and educators like yourselves about how to manage these new experiences online, including bullying. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you very much.
And last but not least, we have Amy Williams, who is the Digital License Advisor at the Alana and Madeline Foundation, also based here in Melbourne. And the Alana and Madeline Foundation was formed in 1996 with the goal of really enshrining the rights that children have to lead a safe and happy childhood. In 2014, Google awarded the Alana and Madeline Foundation $1.2 million to fund a free digital license for every Year 6 child across Australia. So we're delighted to have you here as well, Amy. All right, to get the conversation started, I'd like to ask you each a question, actually, and that is to share your thoughts with us and our audience of educators about the shift in conversation that really needs to happen between educators and young people in schools around the use of technology. We know we want to encourage safe and responsible practices, but how do we shift the conversation to enable us to have an open dialogue with young people about this? Anthony?
I think one of the first things that needs to happen is we recognise that our role as educators, whilst we have an impact on the children in our classroom every day, one of the fundamental things we need to realise is that really parents are involved in that partnership as well. So, I mean, I can have an honest dialogue with the kids in our school, but really if the parents aren't on board with that, then I'm not really going to be that effective, because I'm not quite sure if the same messages are being instilled and valued at school and at home. So one of the things that sometimes does happen is that, particularly with primary school students that I work with, is that they can embark into spaces that might not be entirely suitable for somebody under the age of 13. And sometimes there might be that culture of it's okay because everybody else in our school community does that, or my friends are in that space. So I think sometimes it's about approaching that conversation and I guess, dealing with it in a way that's proactive and beneficial for all stakeholders, and realising that there might be some really good things that come out of that. And, for some students, I think we should be able to trust what they can do, because there might be potentially some students that do the wrong thing, but that shouldn't necessarily be a reason to ban or block something for everybody.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely a collaboration, and as they say, it takes a village. And in this context as well, we all have a role to play as parents, carers, educators, the technology industry as well, and government, of course. Caitlin, tell us what your thoughts are.
I would say that I think we really need to stop dehumanising, these major social media platforms and the digital world, and really reorient the spotlight on the positives that we see young people using or navigating the online world. And I guess I'm lucky in my work, working in schools every day with Project Rocket, is I do get to see the incredible things that young people are creating thanks to the digital world, and reminding ourselves that technology is not inherently evil, and that we are the makers of the online world. It's not out to get us. Although, if you've ever had an autocorrect fail, you might not agree with us, but it's really not. And I think in realizing that we're the makers of the online world and empowering our young people, right, to realize that their impact is worth it, and that their digital behaviour, it's no different from the online to the offline world, that at the end of the day, it really draws back to their values and what's important to them.
I think that's right, and as somebody of my generation tends to think about the online and the offline worlds as being two different places, but for young people who have grown up with technology at their fingertips, it's not two separate places, it's one and the same, and they carry the same values across to both worlds.
Yeah.
Amy?
Thanks, Sam. I think that's a really good point you make, and I think that's why we have to make it really important within our curriculum that digital literacy actually does sit with the core subjects like maths and English. That way we can, as educators, pass on the message to parents and to students that it is important. It's an important role within education that we can educate them to, yes, have a look at the positives, and obviously they're very attracted to the online world, but also to educate them that there are unfortunate safety issues out there, and then when they do come across some things that may be inappropriate content or unwanted contact, that they themselves actually are empowered to do something about it, and they actually have strategies from being educated in how to actually cope with that.
Yes, and it's not a revolutionary idea to be teaching children about broader safety issues in school. We teach kids about road safety, we teach them about drug and alcohol education and so on. This is really an extension to that. And Amy, perhaps I'll just ask you a direct question now. The foundation was formed 20 years ago at a time where thinking about technology in the classroom and every child bringing their own device to school would have seemed like a science fiction movie.
Absolutely.
Do you have any advice for educators about how they can adapt the way that they are talking to students and really helping students and young people understand how to navigate these new spaces in the context of the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for them to have a real understanding that the students they're teaching have only been alive in the online world. They have only been around since the internet has been here. So I think having that appreciation that that is their world is a huge step to make. I think actually teaching specifics of what is cyberbullying, what can happen online that can cause issues such as mental health issues for children later on, or no matter whereabouts in their life, if they're exposed to this, what can happen. And because of that, I think that educators, teachers need to be trained in how to cope with incidences such as that. So I think a lot of training needs to happen with teachers themselves, especially teachers that are of the older generation that perhaps don't feel confident in themselves to teach it. I think that we need to give them the tools to pass that knowledge on to the students themselves. So I think that also integrating technology within their classroom, as simply as having blogs, everyday blogs, or instead of summarising a book report on paper, ask them to tweet it, pretend that they're using Twitter. Just little simple things like that, even for teachers that haven't been around or don't feel confident, can excite their students and give them the sense that they understand that the online world is exciting and attractive to them.
Because technology just provides an additional tool in an educator's toolkit, essentially,
Absolutely,
doesn't it?
yes.
The same principles are being taught and conveyed, but there are just now many more techniques of conveying that information.
Definitely.
And Anthony, I might jump to you now as an educator on the front line. Students are now taking a much stronger sense of personal ownership over the technology that they're using in the classroom than they really have been able to in the past. In school, as an educator, can you share with us how you have approached kind of balancing these issues around access to information and interactions with people that the students may not have met before in real life, and just being safe and responsible. How you've tread that minefield of issues in your practice in St Mark's.
Well, I think the first thing we need to realise is that we can't stick our head in the sand around these issues. We have to realise that technology has fundamentally shifted the world as we know it, and it's going to continue to do so in the foreseeable future. So you're right, we absolutely have to make sure that our students understand information that's out there and allow them to leverage technology, because it's so incredibly important that we embrace technology in our classroom. The implication is that there are potential risks around that, and it's just absolutely fundamental that we are aware of those, but we don't shy away from them, but rather we are proactive in assisting our students to navigate safely, responsibly, and in smart, effective ways in those spaces. I think the other thing to recognise is that we don't want to be doing this lip service, and what I mean by that is I can teach a lesson about cyber safety for an hour and just tell kids don't do this or do this and whatever it might be, but as we've already discussed, if it's something that's embedded in the classroom, like sending emails towards students or students to teachers, we do that often in my school, or having a year level blog where you can share your learning and communicate to your parents online, or using cloud tools and word processing documents, and when you're sharing those documents around to other peers and you're collaborating together, it actually gives you a meaningful platform to have that conversation about here's how you protect your identity, here's how you talk respectfully, here's how you don't talk in capital letters all the time. Those sorts of conventions, because otherwise it just becomes this sort of like lip service. I'm talking about cyber safety and appropriate use and digital citizenship, but it needs to be contextualised.
Yeah,
it needs to be
tangible,
meaningful,
isn't it?
right?
You can refer back to it and pick up on issues that are happening within those in a safe environment with the classroom. And I think that's really important, that your students feel safe, and during that time to be able to give them the confidence to discuss the implications of unsafe practices.
Some educators listening to us today may be feeling, well, gee, it's a lot of responsibility to place on my shoulders. How do you feel that teachers and educators can be best supported to really enable this environment in their classrooms?
It certainly can be challenging. I mean, we as teachers, we wear many hats,
yes.
and sometimes we're doctors and nurses and
yes.
counsellors and everything else, and now we're cyber safety experts.
Yes,
but we have to be.
Yeah.
We really, really have to be. Like, I just strongly believe in allowing students to be fluent with digital technologies, and with that comes the other side of the coin. And it's really as how we approach that as a school and how we embrace that and decide how that's embedded within our school culture and how that's going to have an impact on our teaching and learning programs and therefore our students and parents is important. Look, there's a lot of support out there. The Alana Madeline Foundation, the eSmart program, the digital license, both of those first-hand experience in my own school have been amazing for us, and I know many educators in my region and beyond have also had a lot of success with those programs. So it's about finding, yes, thank you so much, because what it gives our school is just really valuable resources. I know even the Australian government, the eSafety Commissioner website as well. I guess it's probably up to teachers to have the mindset that we need to go and investigate these issues and really decide how we're going to tackle them head on and not shy away from them. But there is certainly a lot of support out there for us. You could reveal more about that around the eSmart and the digital license.
Yeah, I think it was just wanting schools to have something that they could refer back to throughout the whole year. Even though you may opt to teach a digital license over a term, a semester, a year, it's completely flexible, it's still, you can refer back to it when needed. It's not a one-off of let's talk about it, let's tuck it away, with tick the box. It's about having something to always refer back to and open those lines of discussion every time something has happened that may be an unsafe practice, that we can then go back and say, what tools did we teach you? What have you learnt? Stats are alarming every day. They come out to say that at 10 years now, their first exposure to pornography. That's horrific when you think that primary school children are not really supposed to be on social media until they're 13, but that can happen so easily accidentally. So I think we need to have those frank discussions with our children to say there is content online that's not suitable for you, but if you do see it, which they may come across, they need the tools to empower themselves to say, I'm going to make this right decision, and I know that there's 3 things I can do if I do see this inappropriate content. So I think it's empowering them and trusting them that they can make those decisions by us teaching them the tools.
It's like a whole school approach.
That's
so
right.
important.
Yeah.
And that there's a trusted adult that they can speak to, whether that's a
Absolutely.
parent or a carer or indeed an education.
Absolutely.
And Anthony just mentioned the Office of the eSafety Commissioner as well, and I wanted to give them props because they have an incredible website with a wealth of resources, including virtual classrooms, a list of certified training providers who come into schools and who teach children and young people about these issues. So do go to their website.
Absolutely.
I might just put a little add-in onto that and share one of the simple things that we do with our students is to give them access to an online form that's always bookmarked on their device. And that online form they know is they can decide to be anonymous if they wish or provide some contact information. But it's just a way of them being able to express if they've seen something that's distressing, confusing, harmful, if they've witnessed something or they know of some sort of chatter going on, whether it's on school provided services or other services, they know that they have somebody on the other end, a trusted adult, a trusted teacher, somebody who can listen and can take action if they want us to. It's just simple ways that you can be proactive with your school community rather than reactive all the time. I think those little things that we need to start bringing about more often into our schools.
Absolutely.
And it's this unified language as well, right? Like the moment a young person understands that their trusted adult or, or even the right adult for them, whoever that may be, understands their language, because it is a totally different, ball game when it comes to, talking about how to navigate the online world. And if you have a form like this that, your students can access, it's this understanding that, my teachers get me, which is so important when I'm talking about this with them.
And I think it also gives them the confidence that they're not just one-on-one. I think that's the issues we have a lot with cyberbullying. It's so, they're feeling so alone, it's just them and their device. Whereas when it happens out in the school yard, you might feel like you've got the teacher just over there. Whereas that form could be that teacher, knowing that, okay, it's happening to me, but I know that I've got something that I can go to and feel safe.
Absolutely.
So it's small things like that that I think we need to start making the shift.
And I might also add, it was thanks to the eSmart program that this is an example of one of the changes that we did make. And it's what I essentially like about it is that it's a change process. So it's about changing the culture within your school and tying it into your well-being policies and everything else that underpins that to ensure that you have lasting change in your school, as opposed to just sending one teacher off to a PD. What I really like about the eSmart model is that it is a change process for your school, scaffolded wherever you are on your journey to reach that eSmart status, for a better word, to recognise that yes, we are about ensuring that our students can be safe, smart, responsible users of technology.
Caitlin, I feel like we've been speaking about young people very much in the abstract today.
These young people.
This phenomenon of young people. Could you talk to us a little bit about the young people that you interact with every day in your work at Project Rocket, and share with us some suggestions that you have for how we can really amplify their contribution to this conversation and their voice in this dialogue?
Yeah, so I guess every day at Project Rocket, we run workshops in schools and work with young people on coming up with credible strategies to navigate the online world. I often find that a young person doesn't like seeing hate online, but it's what am I going to do about it? It's how am I going to be part of the solution to the hate that I do see, and also empowering them to understand how valuable their impact is, and that one small gesture, blocking, reporting, writing a counter comment, a positive counter comment to show someone support online that might be having a difficult time can absolutely change someone's life. And I think, you know, young people are absolutely the digital natives, so to speak. They've grown up with technology at their fingertips. The other day I saw a family with a child in their pram with a tablet attached to the pram, right? And as they were kind of like playing some sort of, I'm going to say, educational game, maybe. But it's just part of their I guess, their language, and it's kind of innate, you know, for lack of a better phrase. And when it comes to empowering them to challenge the hate they see, I think that we need to understand as educators our place is so vital in looking at empathy and education as a balance, finding that balance, so to speak. So, for instance, in communities where education is thriving but empathy might be lacking, a young person's going to know what to do, but they're not going to want to do anything about it. And then vice versa, where empathy is thriving but education might be lacking, they're going to not know what to do about it. They're going to really want to do something but not have the tools or the strategies to tackle hate that they see online. And I think that in working with young people as educators, we have such an exciting role to play in that, you know, we are the ones that get to work with them every day on figuring out what their values are and what's important to them, and helping them understand that your values don't switch off the moment you open your laptop or you bring out your device, that it's absolutely, they influence our choices and our decisions every single day. And it's no different if you're navigating the online world. And one of the greatest things I get to see in my work is the positives of, you know, young people navigating this digital landscape. In fact, I often meet students, I'm going to say almost every day, that have really found their space online and have found a sort of global community, so to speak, in that they might be into something really quite left of field that nobody even knows about. It might be something that they've then found their crew online. There are platforms out there and apps and, you know, different avenues in which they can find people that are really into similar things as them. And in fact, there's one student who I often talk about who didn't necessarily have her crew at school. She didn't feel like she fit in. School wasn't for her, but she really wanted to finish. But she would go home each night and jump online and feel so happy and safe because she was an incredible, and still is, a visual makeup designer. She does like visual effects makeup. And from that and her passion and exploring that online, she's found people that are into similar things all around the world. And she's met people from all around the world that do similar work to her. So she's a 16-year-old student that without the online world to, you know, I guess, access, wouldn't have had that. So to me, that's just one of the greatest things that I think, we can ensure not only do they have access to this stuff, but they feel safe when accessing it as well.
Look, I agree, and it's important we give those opportunities, because if we go with the mindset of it's too dangerous, or I'm not sure how I would approach the conversation, so it's easier to turn off the devices and pretend they don't exist, then we're not going to realise that magical things can happen when we give students that trust and responsibility and autonomy. Your example, you talked about a 16-year-old. I know last year, one of our Year 5 students created a project, and she was given the opportunity to share that work to a wide audience, and there were educators and teachers from around Australia, beyond Australia, overseas in the US, listening and watching to all of our students, but particularly for this child who created some resources that teachers could use with their students to teach other kids how to code. There was one particular academic who contacted us and said, would you mind if we use this in our coursework? And we said, well, absolutely. You know, this is why we share our learning, because it doesn't matter what kids do or how they express themselves. There's somebody out there that will find their tribe. There's somebody who cares about what they're learning about. And, if it wasn't through technology and being able to share and collaborate and connect with other people, then that student wouldn't have that wider audience outside her own classroom. It really just does show what happens if we can really embrace the affordances of technology rather than shy away from them.
Yeah, and I think in restricting the conversation to the worries and the hesitations about, what is it that my child or my student is accessing when they go home, when I'm not looking. At the end of the day, if we create these conversations, you'll learn about the amazing things that they're into. And as you said, finding their tribe online, and whether it be fan fiction or really left of center like hobbies. I've met students that are incredible illustrators and draw anime, and no one at school knows this about them, yet they show me their Instagram account and they've got thousands of followers that are commenting lovely things about their work. And I think that if we shift away from thinking, thousands of followers, like who are these people following, my student, my child? And if you really look at the content of what's there, it's just positive. And it's absolutely, giving that young person encouragement to continue what they're passionate about, and realize that the world is obviously so grand and so great. And if they feel a part of that and connected to that community, then they're going to be happy and they're going to feel secure in who they are, which is so important.
That's the end game, really, isn't it?
And because of that, I think it's really important that the parents know how to have that conversation. And it comes back to educating the parents, educating the teachers how to speak their language, how to be introduced to their world, really, because it's exciting.
I think one way that you can do that is to take a code view approach. So rather than a surveillance or monitoring or spying, we know kids aren't going to be able to react to that very nicely. You'd probably be able to talk more specifically.
Well, they have more than one account, don't they?
Right, exactly.
You can be my friend, but
or an app that hides all the apps.
Yeah. So they're going to be savvy. They're going to work around that. Yeah. But if you take a co-view approach, where you can literally sit alongside with a student, whether you're the teacher or whether you're a parent, and to be able to say, tell me more about this online space and who's in it and how is it useful and why do you care about it, rather than sort of like a top-down approach.
It's about the trust, isn't it? The trust within them, and then they will trust you.
And I think those, as you say, those conversations can be difficult or scary to have, but I think, in utilising the digital world to benefit us, we think about it like this. I've met many parents who find it really hard to have these conversations face to face. In fact, I've heard from one father, he said he has conversations with his son in the car. He thinks it because he can't jump out of a moving vehicle, but because there's no eye contact. And if you think about it, when you're communicating via technology, there's no eye contact. And I hear from many parents that they have the greatest conversations with their kids via their technology, via their device. And some of them think, is that okay? Is that a good thing? Are we losing this personal touch? But at the end of the day, if you can find a way to communicate and that they actually talk to you and then in turn trust you to then maybe one day come to you in person, then why not utilize that technology to benefit you?
I'd love to wrap the session up by asking Amy and Anthony to give us, to give the educators a piece of advice from each of you and your experiences about really how you think we can best cultivate these digital capacities amongst young people today. Amy, let's start with you.
I think my advice is to trust your students. I think that they, different to when they come into school and they may not know a lot about maths or English, they know a lot about digital. And they know a lot about their online world. So I think that as teachers, we can learn a lot from them. And I think that we need to trust them to make the right decisions. I think we need to impart our knowledge about safety. I think we're really good about that, adults, teachers, parents. But I think they're really good about what's exciting about their online world and why it's so attractive to them. So I think we all need to come together. And I think we need to collaboratively teach together. Student, teacher and parent.
Great. Anthony?
Look, I think as we've indicated, students want and expect technology, and that's just a fact we have to face. So because of that, they can learn with us or without us. So it's really up to us to be proactive rather than reactive, again, in that situation. And, there might be teachers that feel that technology or computers are taking your jobs. It's simply not true. It's even more important for teachers to be, on the forefront of this. And the expertise that an adult brings is that wisdom.
Mm.
You know, how do we instill those ethics and those values and those dispositions to make sure that kids are safe? Because, you know, none of us would want to put a child in an unsafe territory. So we need to realise that if we're not having these conversations and really instilling these, we are potentially endangering our children, and it's not good enough. So I think we, as adults, we bring that wisdom, and that's the important part of this open conversation that needs to happen between the parents, the teachers,
it's those
and
frank
the children.
discussions, isn't it, that we need to make sure we're having on a daily basis.
And ask, you know, if you're uncertain, I think it's so important to have an understanding of what, you know, social media platforms your young person might be using. And if you don't know what, you know, Instagram, if you don't know what Facebook or Snapchat is, ask. Because you'll find that they want to tell you, and they enjoy explaining what it is. You know, their eyes light up talking about this stuff, we know. So asking and ensuring that you have that, you know, basic understanding. That way, you know, if a future problem arises, then you have that kind of basic language around what it is they're using.
I think that's right. You know, don't be frightened. You know, we hear a lot of parents saying, I don't know how to have conversations with my kids about technology because I don't understand it. I don't know what they're doing. But you don't need to understand it. And I think that applies to educators as well. You don't need to understand the technology to have an open and respectful conversation with the young people in your care.
And look, a reaction to that can be the idea of a filter or a block, you know, for both primary and secondary and for parents and schools. It was like, well, let's just block all the social media. Let's just block all the harmful content. The reality is we're never going to be effective at doing that because if we're blocking it at school, blocking it at home, kids these days, they're very, very good at finding, very savvy at finding anything that's open, whether it's their neighbours. When they walk from school to home, I bet you they'll probably pass 5 or 10, you know, different open hotspots. They can go to shopping centres and, you know, restaurants. There's Wi-Fi everywhere. What's going to happen when they all of a sudden have open access? So I know there's that throwaway line, a bit of a cliche, that the best filter is the one inside, is the one between your ears. But I think there's a lot of truth in that. So really, how are we developing literally our kids' brains? How are we giving them the filters they need to be able to react and cope with whatever online future they want to have?
And it's about them just having the tools to be able to cope with any incident online that makes them feel uncomfortable.
Much like offline. You want people to know what to do if a stranger approaches them on the street. Similarly, you want young people to know what to do if somebody starts talking to them in a chat room or in any kind of social space and they don't know that person. You just want to know that they have the tools and the know-how to be able to manage that situation.
And I think you can use that, Sam, as well with going forward with their online future. How do you want to be perceived in your online world? Just as you wouldn't walk down the street looking like you know, putting yourself out there in a positive light, why would you do that online? So it's those conversations that you can have with them to say, how do you want your prospective job seeker to look like? Your prospective employer, do you want them to see you in a really great light? Well, of course you do. So that's maybe the conversations we can have, and hopefully they think twice about posting a picture that doesn't put them out there in a very positive light, and also their friends and family as well.
And on top of that, I think, you know, we do hear this idea of like failure, you know, we get told, I remember as a young person again, like being told that if you fail, it's okay. And obviously failure plays out in such a different way in the digital landscape. So I think if we, you know, have, I guess, the amazing comments from today, if we do instill young people with these values and just the simple idea, right, of your own filter, I love that, then if they fail and they do make a mistake, it's okay. And that at the end of the day, if we've kind of empowered them to feel safe to talk to you about it, then you know, we can then find the solution. Even if it is scary to navigate, it's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, on that very uplifting note, Caitlin, I might bring the panel to a close, but I want to thank you all so much for contributing your thoughts, experience and expertise today to our educators. We've talked a lot about this being a shared responsibility in our communities, shared between parents, carers, young people, educators, the technology industry and government as well. We've talked about the need for educators to feel supported through this transition. Classrooms are undergoing an incredible evolution and educators need support. They need resources to refer back to, and they need to know that there is somewhere they can go to ask questions or just seek clarification. We've also talked about the need to have very open conversations and that young people need to be involved in those conversations. We need to know that young people have the confidence and the respect for the trusted adults in their lives to go to them if they encounter something online that concerns them or upsets them, or that they just don't understand and want help processing, so that we can lend our wisdom. I love that phrase, right. Anthony. We can share our wisdom with them at a time when they are developing their own social compass and moral compass. So thank you very much for your thoughts. And to our educators, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful experience with Education on Air.